peace building. Today we can choose again. Demilitarize, abolish the war economy, and create a Ministry of Peace. This Women's Day, we commit to 1. Boycott, divest, sanction. Cut ties with apartheid, from ASB Banks to Lockheed Martin. 2. A Ministry of Peace. Demand Aotearoa establish a ministry dedicated to conflict prevention, Indigenous justice, and demilitarising the Pacific. 3. Heal intergenerational trauma. Fund Māori and Pacifica-led programs to break cycles of violence. As Moana Jackson said, decolonization is the best mental health policy. And 4, global solidarity. Link arms with movements like Oceania Against Nuclear Arms and Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Susan Abu Hawa, a novelist in Palestine, says to be Palestinian is to be born into a love story with a land others want to bury you beneath. Let's fight that until the love story is free. And in closing, I want to say to the men and boys here, you are not doomed to become soldiers and settlers. And I, for one, as a mother, want to apologise that you were raised to believe that that is true. To the elders, your stories map the path to freedom. And to women and girls, your outrage is sacred. Outrage is a natural physiological healing response to oppression. Let us close with the words of Fatima El-Ghura, Palestinian poet and survivor of Gaza's massacres. She wrote, "They burned our olive trees, but our roots drink from the tears of ancestors. They stole our land, but our womb births revolutions. This Women's Day, let our lives be revolutions. Let Aotearoa lead the Pacific as a demilitarised nuclear-free zone. Let us birth a world where ministries of peace replace war departments, where children inherit forests, not fear. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and until then, none of us are free." Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Laurie. That gave us much food for thought, and there are very true words about the impact of war, militarisation and hate, which we are working to try and defuse. So thanks again, Laurie. And maybe our chant is, Israel, USA, how many kids did you kill today?
Israel, USA, how many kids did you kill today?
Israel, USA, how many kids did you kill today?
Israel, USA, how many kids did you kill today?
Israel, USA, how many women did you kill today?
Israel, USA, how many women did you kill today?
Israel, USA, how many women did you kill today?
Israel, USA, how many women did you kill today?
Well, thank you very much. And our next speaker is Eugene Velasco from Gabriela Aotearoa, and it is part of the Women's Movement and International Alliance. So thank you very much.
Kia ora. I have another chant, and I need everyone to participate. Hello? Yes, yeah. The women united will never be defeated. The women united will never be defeated. Louder. The women united will never be defeated. On the International Working Women's Day and solidarity with the Palestinian struggle for justice, peace, and national liberation. But before that, I'm Eugene from Gabriela, Aotearoa, New Zealand. We are a grassroots community organization of Filipino women here in Aotearoa. We're part of the International Women's Alliance, a grassroots women alliance for liberation. We're also fighting for the national democracy in the Philippines. From Palestine to the Philippines, the US government is using American taxpayers' money in funding and arming the brutal state forces, leading to the most ruthless civilian killings and widespread human rights abuses. The support for neo-colonial, corrupt, and fascist governments in Israel and the Philippines from the United States through military aid and political backing has enabled a cycle of violence that disproportionately affects marginalized communities, particularly women and children. The US government is essential in building and sustaining the criminal and Zionist state of Israel. From 1946 to 2022, America has given $300 billion worth of American dollars as foreign aid. Just last 2023, they allocated $14.5 billion as military aid to the IDF. Shame. We celebrate the International Working Women's Day by affirming and strengthening international solidarity to end violence against women, children, and gender non-conforming peoples, and against US imperialism and the criminal Zionist state of Israel. The alarming statistic that 1 in 3 women worldwide will experience violence in her lifetime is a clear reminder of the pervasive injustice that transcends geographical borders. This injustice is further magnified in Gaza, where US-funded genocide and ethnic cleansing against the Palestinian people have resulted in the deaths of more than 61,000 people since the 7th of October 2023. More than 70% of them were women and children. Shame! The Filipino people is in solidarity with Palestinians because the arms trade deals between Israel and the government of the Philippines deepens the impact of conflicts and violence, both in the Philippines and Palestine. The Philippines is the third biggest buyer of Israel-made military weapons that were used to massacre thousands of innocent Filipino civilians during Duterte's drug war and to commit blatant human rights violations. This arms trade supports and funds Israel's aggression towards the Palestinians in Gaza and in West Bank over the years and the ongoing atrocities in that region. During the peak of the former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's notorious drug war in the Philippines, Israel entered contracts to supply significant quantities of military hardware to Filipino law enforcement that worsened human rights abuses against the poor, human rights advocates, unions and peasants organizers, and innocent Filipino civilians. In celebrating International Working Women's Day, our collective commitment to ending family violence within our communities is intrinsically linked to our stand against imperialistic violence and wars perpetrated by Zionism and the US war machine. Sorry, I'm lost. We oppose the illegal Israel occupation until now in Palestine and in Gaza, and the ongoing US-sponsored genocide and ethnic cleansing in all other countries like Congo, Sudan. Yes. And our solidarity extends from fighting the gender equality to giving our unwavering support to the Palestinian women, children, gender non-conforming peoples, and men in their pursuit of justice, peace, immediate and justice and national liberation against Zionism, settler colonialism, and US imperialism. Resistance is justified when people are occupied. Long live women's liberation against violence, patriarchy, Zionism, and US imperialism. Long live international solidarity. and from Palestine to the Philippines, stop the U.S. war machine. When women united will never be defeated. The women united will never be defeated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And isn't it wonderful the spirit that comes from internationalism and solidarity? And our next speaker is Jane Kelsey, and I'm sure Jane is not a stranger to you. She's a dedicated advocate and activist in Indigenous studies, Indigenous struggles in Aotearoa and around the world. She's also a highly respected academic who's worked tirelessly to promote human rights and justice. So Jane, where are you? Yes. So thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Ki ngā tangata whenua o tēnei wā, ngā te katoa o Orake tēnā koutou e ngā iwi o ngā hei whā tēnā koutou. E wahine mā, ia Aotearoa, and the women warriors of Gaza and the rest of the world. Today is a day to celebrate resistance and survival. I've been asked, and it's short, I've been asked to draw some parallels between the colonisation struggles, the anti-colonisation struggles in Gaza and some of what is happening in contemporary Aotearoa. And I know that you've had some previous kōrero here that has been around various of that man's complicity in many things. I'm going to talk a little bit today about another that has gone somewhat under the radar. So we're going to put it on the radar and we're going to put it on the list of actions that we will take in the name of Te Tiriti o Waitangi as we act in solidarity with Palestine. So, if we look at the scourge of colonisation in Palestine and in Aotearoa, we see the same lethal logic and objectives. Theft of land. Theft of land converted into notions of private property by those who have stolen the land, claiming that over those who now seek to reoccupy what is theirs in Palestine and Aotearoa. The denial of sovereignty, self-determination of the authority to decide your own lives through your own chosen leaders. Same in Palestine, same in Aotearoa. The denigration of women, the violence against women that we've heard about today in Palestine not only brings back memories of the history of colonisation, for example, the sacking of Parihaka and the rape of the women by the British soldiers and the generations who carry that with them today, but the violence against young Māori women that we heard in the Royal Commission on State Abuse, and that continues in the fact that Māori women are the most imprisoned women in the Western world. When we look at culture, and we look at the cultural genocide taking place in Palestine, whether it's religious, whether it's linguistic, whether it's simply the right to be who you are, we see the same history of genocide in Aotearoa. We see that whether it is language, we see that whether it is the practice of rongoa and traditional healing, we see that in the right to be recognised as even existing for those of us who had the misfortune of appearing before the Select Committee on the Treaty Principles Bill, the offensive questions from the ACT Party member in that committee that denied fundamentally the existence of Māori as a culture. That and so much else that has been achieved through the illegitimate seizure of power by colonists, not simply for power, but for the power of capitalism, the power of profit, the power of wealth, the ability to use those resources that have been stolen to reinforce that illegitimate seizure of power and the seizure of more and more resources. And we see a commonality across both Palestine and Aotearoa about the contempt for treaties. Treaties and agreements entered into in good faith. Treaties that are supposed to provide for the protection of all of those things that have been taken. Treaties that are disrespected, that are disregarded, that are rewritten by the colonising power time and time again to try to legitimise that power. I have to say one of the problems I have since 1981 here is that I don't have a voice to be able to chant very well, but I can hear some shames happening here. So if I do a quiet shame, can you do a loud shame? Shame! 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 So, what I want to do to connect to a particular action of that man in Aotearoa today is to focus not so much on the role of the state, but the role of capital and capital's compliance with the colonial state. And to point out who in fact are the winners from these assaults. Because when we look at the billions of dollars that are being fed into the war against Palestine and Palestinian people and Palestinian women, and if we're looking at the billions that are being poured into Ukraine, that is not going into food, that is not going into medicines, that is not going into reconstruction. It is going into the military-industrial complex that has a vested interest in the continuation of these wars. Shame. 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 So, if we come and look at the colonisation process in Aotearoa today, we see the same processes continuing, but we see different tools being used. In the past, and in the memory of many of us here, we have seen the forces of the state, whether it was down at Takaparawhau with the army's jeeps rolling in and destroying the occupation, the peaceful resistance down there. Today we have less of that. We have the use of an equally potent tool, which is the law. And I say that as a former professor of law. We know exactly how potent that is. Same rule book, different tools. And what we've seen, and you're very familiar with much of that, has been the rollback of many of the hard-won respites and redresses, at least over the last 50 years. Whether we look at Takutai Moana and the seabed and foreshore, whether we look at Te Reo Māori and its recognition of the setting up of the Kata Māori and the Māori radio stations, if we look at the destruction now of the Māori wards in local government, hard-fought battles that have been reversed. And they have been reversed as part of a systematic program. And of course, what we focused on most was the Treaty Principles Bill, which was a blatant, cynical attempt to rewrite the agreement itself. The power of the people was evident in the resistances to that, in many, many spaces. I've been involved in 5 Waitangi Tribunal hearings in the last 6 months. We've had the massive protests on the streets. We've had occupations occurring in Rohe where hapu have been standing up. And so we have seen that private resistance that has not been fought out in the parliaments. It's been fought out by mana whenua and tangata tiriti taking back the voice. But what we are seeing now is another very pernicious attempt to achieve what we've been told won't happen under the Treaty Principles Bill. We've been told that National and New Zealand First will not see it through into law. In many ways, Mr. Seymour and ACT have already achieved what they wanted to. They have put the issue on the agenda, they have riled up those racists who want to have a right to have a voice that denigrates the existence of mana whenua and that denigrates the Reti o Waitangi and denigrates our right to be here. We know that fills us all with shame. 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 Now what we have now is something that aims to achieve the same thing. And it's a very boring sounding thing. It's called the Regulatory Standards Bill. Free Palestine! Free Palestine! So this Regulatory Standards Bill is another of those backdoor things that was agreed in the coalition agreement. And it has agreed that the ACT Party can not only introduce but pass something that started as a circulatory responsibility bill, which sounds as boring, has 3 times been
Free
rejected
Palestine!
in Parliament.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
And so 3 times ACT has got this into the House and it's been rejected. Now they seem to stand for 3 strikes and you're out, but that doesn't seem to apply here. They've got again in the coalition agreement a commitment that this bill will pass. So what does this bill do? This bill says everything that the Crown does, which includes everything that it does in relation to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, must comply with a set of ACT's libertarian principles based on the same things we saw in the Treaty Principles Bill. Shame. That's individual rights and freedom and the absolute protection of private property rights. So anything that the Crown plans to do has to be passed through these principles tests. There is no reference to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. It is only a reference to ACT's libertarian values. So what it plans to do is basically a coup on the internal processes of making new laws, regulations, decisions within the state. So what they plan to do is to say that we should have no state interference in individual liberties or private property, which means that we should have a hands-off approach to the kinds that law does. Leaky buildings, so that construction companies can property as they want and walk away. Like River, so the mining companies can do what they want and walk away. No regulation of health and safety in the forest, so that Māori who are dying in the forests from lack of protections there cannot have new protections put in place that will impact on the profits.
of the forestry companies. We cannot have new climate change policies that are going to impact or impair the private property rights of those affected by it. We cannot reinstate Pakistani money if it's going to impair the private property interests of those who hold it. We can't reverse the fast track that mining authorities and other authorities Shane Jones is putting in place if it's going to impair their value and profit. We can't reverse the GMOs law that comes before the select committee tomorrow morning. That's going to get rid of the GE-free status. We can't bring in wealth taxes because that's going to impact on the profits. So the intention of this is basically to ensure that the rich, the powerful, capitalists who have not only established but who are now under the more liberal foreign investment laws going to be coming in here have guarantees. But they will also have a guarantee that if governments act in ways that impact negatively on their value or profits, they can get full compensation for it. And when I've been arguing with some of the architects of this from within ACT, they say, oh, you're saying Māori shouldn't get compensation when their resources are taken. And I said, well, I don't see anything retrospective in this. You're not going to go back and say, okay, let's go back to 1840 and compensate from there on. And you're only going to look at those who've got private property rights that your legal system recognises. And so don't give us that bullshit that somehow this is about security and growth. This is about ensuring that ACT and its supporters manage to tie down for the indefinite future, having sacked most of the public service, that their interests are protected and adhered. And so if we look at what Trump was talking about with Trump Gaza and the obscenity of that, it's the same logic that we're seeing with the EU. There's been a consultation paper on this. The consultation paper attracted about 22,000 submissions, which is really good. It meant the birds were getting around. Now we have a claim before the Waitangi Tribunal seeking urgency on this at present, which will be decided in the next couple of weeks. And there are a lot of resources online about what to do. There is currently a discussion underway, so I can't actually tell you the 1 to 10 of what to do. It's a question of keeping your eyes open over the next 3 or 4 weeks to see what kind of mobilisation